That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Nietzsche believed that wisdom is not found in stability, certainty, or fixed truths, but in transformation. He rejected the idea that a person has a final, finished self. Instead, he saw human life as a continuous process of becoming. To live wisely, he argued, is to participate consciously in this process rather than resisting it. He believed that many people seek comfort in static identities. They want to know who they are once and for all. They cling to labels, roles, and beliefs because these offer psychological safety. But Nietzsche saw this desire for permanence as a form of weakness. Life, he argued, is movement, tension, and change. To deny this is to deny life itself. Nietzsche believed that suffering is not something to be eliminated at all costs. He observed that people often measure wisdom by how well they avoid pain. But he argued the opposite: growth requires friction. He famously wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." For Nietzsche, suffering was not inherently meaningful, but it was unavoidable. Wisdom lay in how one responded to it. He believed that modern individuals often live reactively. They absorb values, morals, and expectations without questioning their origin. They inherit ideas about success, failure, good, and bad, and treat them as absolute. Nietzsche saw this as intellectual passivity. Wisdom, for him, required the courage to examine where one's values come from and whether they truly serve life. Nietzsche believed that many people live according to what he called borrowed meaning. They follow paths designed by others, hoping that approval or conformity will provide fulfillment. But he argued that meaning cannot be handed down. It must be created. He wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Wisdom, then, was not obedience to meaning, but the ability to generate it. He rejected the idea that truth is always comforting. In fact, he believed that many illusions exist precisely because they protect people from uncomfortable realities. Nietzsche did not believe wisdom meant replacing illusion with despair. He believed it meant replacing illusion with strength. A wise person, in his view, does not require comforting falsehoods to endure existence. Nietzsche emphasized self-overcoming as the core of wisdom. He believed the greatest danger to the human spirit is stagnation. When a person stops questioning themselves, stops challenging their limits, and stops evolving, they decay internally, even if their external life appears successful. He wrote, "Man is something that shall be overcome." This overcoming was not about domination of others, but mastery of oneself. He believed that emotions like resentment and bitterness are signs of unresolved weakness. When people feel powerless, they reinterpret their inability to act as moral superiority. Nietzsche saw this as psychological inversion. Wisdom, for him, meant confronting one's limitations honestly rather than disguising them as virtues. Nietzsche believed that creativity is an expression of wisdom. Not creativity limited to art, but creativity as self-formation. A wise person shapes their character deliberately. They do not drift into habits unconsciously. They experiment with ways of thinking, living, and responding to the world. They treat life as a project rather than a prison. He believed that fear of judgment prevents growth. People avoid becoming who they could be because they fear misunderstanding or rejection. Nietzsche argued that individuality always appears strange at first. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." Wisdom, then, required the strength to stand alone when necessary. Nietzsche rejected the idea that balance means moderation in all things. He believed that great growth often comes from intensity. Passion, risk, and commitment were signs of vitality. A life without tension, he argued, is a life that avoids becoming. Wisdom does not numb life, it sharpens it. He also warned against excessive self-pity. While suffering is inevitable, dwelling in it becomes a form of stagnation. Nietzsche believed that wisdom transforms pain into fuel rather than identity. He wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Chaos, when understood and directed, becomes creative power. Nietzsche believed that the highest wisdom does not seek approval from the future or validation from the past. It acts from inner necessity. A person who lives wisely does not ask whether their path will be praised. They ask whether it is honest, vital, and aligned with their deepest capacities. He believed that becoming requires risk. Growth always involves the possibility of failure. Those who seek guarantees remain trapped. Wisdom, for Nietzsche, involved embracing uncertainty without surrendering agency. It meant saying yes to life even when outcomes are unclear. Nietzsche believed that strength is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to move forward despite it. The wise person does not wait for perfect clarity. They act, observe, learn, and transform. They treat mistakes as information rather than verdicts. He believed that the goal of wisdom is not comfort, happiness, or peace in the traditional sense. The goal is intensity of life. A life fully lived, fully questioned, and fully owned. He wrote, "Become who you are." This was not a call to discover a hidden essence, but to create oneself through conscious effort. Nietzsche believed that wisdom culminates in affirmation. Not naive optimism, but deep acceptance of life as it is, uncertain, difficult, and unfinished. A wise person does not wish reality were different. They work within it. They shape themselves within it. They grow through it. For Nietzsche, wisdom was not a destination. It was a movement. A continual process of becoming stronger, clearer, and more honest. A refusal to settle into complacency. A willingness to face discomfort in the name of growth. To live wisely, in his view, was to treat life as something to be shaped rather than endured. Not by force, but by courage. Not by certainty, but by creation. That was Nietzsche's vision of wisdom. Not peace without struggle, but strength through becoming. Nietzsche believed that one of the greatest obstacles to becoming is the fear of contradiction. People want their lives to appear consistent, coherent, and explainable. They avoid change because change exposes past beliefs as incomplete. But Nietzsche saw contradiction not as failure, but as evidence of growth. A person who never contradicts themselves, he believed, has never truly developed. Wisdom allows a person to outgrow earlier versions of themselves without apology. He warned against living by ideals that weaken vitality. Many moral systems, he argued, were created not to elevate life, but to restrain it. They encourage obedience, self-denial, and guilt rather than strength and creativity. Nietzsche believed wisdom requires examining whether one's values enhance life or diminish it. He wrote, "There are no moral phenomena at all, only a moral interpretation of phenomena." Wisdom begins when interpretation is questioned. Nietzsche believed that honesty with oneself is rare and difficult. People often hide behind excuses, narratives, and justifications to avoid confronting their true motives. Wisdom, for him, required a ruthless clarity, seeing one's desires, fears, and ambitions without disguise. He believed self-deception was more dangerous than ignorance because it creates the illusion of understanding where none exists. He believed that resentment quietly shapes many lives. When people feel unable to act, they reinterpret their frustration as moral superiority. Nietzsche saw this as a reversal of values driven by weakness. Wisdom, he argued, involves recognizing resentment before it hardens into identity. A wise person does not build their worldview around what they oppose, but around what they affirm. Nietzsche placed great importance on solitude. Not isolation, but distance. He believed that constant immersion in social opinion dulls independent thought. Wisdom requires space to hear one's own thinking. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." Solitude, for Nietzsche, was not escape, but incubation, a space where becoming could occur. He believed that discipline is not the enemy of freedom, but its foundation. Without discipline, impulses rule. Without structure, potential remains unrealized. Nietzsche rejected rigid self-denial, but he admired self-mastery. Wisdom, in his view, involved shaping one's instincts rather than suppressing them. Energy directed becomes strength, energy denied becomes resentment. Nietzsche believed that great growth often feels like disorientation. When old values collapse, there is a period of uncertainty where nothing feels stable. Many retreat at this stage, clinging to familiar beliefs. But Nietzsche saw this collapse as necessary. He wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Wisdom does not flee chaos, it learns to navigate it. He believed that affirming life means accepting not only pleasure, but difficulty, risk, and loss. Wisdom does not demand that existence be fair. It demands strength to meet existence honestly. Nietzsche admired those who could say yes to life without conditions, without demanding guarantees or protection from suffering. Nietzsche believed that becoming is never complete. The moment a person believes they have arrived, growth stops. Wisdom resists final answers. It remains flexible, experimental, and alive. He warned against turning any philosophy, even his own, into a fixed doctrine. Wisdom, for him, was not a system, but a stance toward life. He believed that the highest form of wisdom is creative affirmation. Not blind optimism, but the ability to transform experience into strength. A wise person does not merely endure what happens, they use it. Failure becomes instruction. Pain becomes refinement. Uncertainty becomes space for creation. Nietzsche believed that life rewards those who dare to shape themselves consciously. Not by imitation, not by obedience, but by courageous self-formation. He wrote, "Become who you are." This was not a call to discover a pre-written identity, but to participate actively in one's own becoming. For Nietzsche, wisdom was never quiet resignation. It was intensity with awareness. It was strength without illusion. It was the courage to live without final answers and still affirm life fully. Wisdom, in his vision, is not something one possesses. It is something one practices again and again through becoming.